Hello everyone, welcome to Platonic Love Stories with another story. Let's move on to the video. Emma stood in the doorway of the old Victorian house, her suitcase in hand, and took a deep breath. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and the faintest hint of rain. She had dreamed of this moment for months, starting a new life with James, the man she had fallen in love with over countless late-night conversations and weekend getaways. But now, as she stepped inside, the weight of her decision settled heavily on her shoulders. The house was quiet, save for the soft ticking of a clock in the hallway. James had warned her that Liam, his 17-year-old son, wasn't exactly thrilled about her moving in. "He's still grieving," James had said, his voice tinged with guilt. "It's not you, Emma. He just needs time." Emma understood. She had never expected to replace Liam's mother, a woman whose presence still lingered in the family photos on the walls and the handwritten recipes tucked into the kitchen drawer. But she had hoped, perhaps naively, that she could at least be a friend to the boy. As if on cue, the sound of footsteps echoed down the stairs. Emma turned to see Liam standing at the bottom step, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. He was tall for his age, with his father's sharp jawline and his mother's piercing blue eyes. Those eyes now bore into Emma with a mixture of curiosity and resentment. "Hey, Liam," Emma said, forcing a smile. "I'm really glad to finally meet you." Liam shrugged, his gaze flickering to the suitcase at her feet. "Yeah, sure, whatever." James appeared behind him, clapping a hand on his son's shoulder. "Liam, why don't you help Emma with her bags? Show her where everything is." Liam shot his father a look that could only be described as incredulous. "Seriously? She's not a guest, Dad. She lives here now, remember?" The words stung, but Emma kept her smile in place. "It's okay, James, I can manage." James sighed, running a hand through his hair. "All right, let's get you settled then." As Emma followed James up the stairs, she couldn't shake the feeling of Liam's eyes on her back. She knew this wouldn't be easy, but she was determined to make it work. For James, for Liam, and for herself. The first few weeks were challenging. Liam made no effort to hide his disdain for Emma, ignoring her attempts at conversation and rolling his eyes whenever she tried to include him in family activities. James did his best to mediate, but even he seemed at a loss for how to bridge the gap between his wife and his son. One evening, after a particularly tense dinner, Emma found herself sitting alone in the living room, staring at the flickering flames in the fireplace. She heard footsteps and looked up to see Liam standing in the doorway, his hands shoved into the pockets of his hoodie. "Hey," he said, his voice softer than usual. Emma blinked in surprise. "Hey, what's up?" Liam hesitated, then stepped into the room. I wanted to apologize for being such a jerk." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "You don't have to apologize, Liam. I know this is hard for you." "Yeah, well, it's not fair to take it out on you." He sat down on the edge of the couch, his gaze fixed on the floor. I miss her, you know? My mom." Emma's chest tightened. "I can't imagine how hard that must be. But I want you to know, I'm not here to replace her. I want to be here for you, however you need me to be." Liam nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thanks, Emma. That means a lot." For the first time since she had moved in, Emma felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to be a family. The days that followed Liam's apology were marked by a tentative truce. He no longer avoided Emma at every turn, and though their conversations were still awkward and stilted, they were conversations nonetheless. Emma took this as progress, no matter how small. One Saturday morning, Emma found herself in the kitchen, flipping through one of the old recipe books that had belonged to Liam's mother. The pages were worn and stained, filled with handwritten notes in the margins. Emma traced her fingers over the looping script, feeling a pang of sadness for the woman she had never known, but whose presence was so deeply felt in this house. "What are you doing?" Emma looked up to see Liam standing in the doorway, a curious expression on his face. "I was just looking through this," she said, holding up the recipe book. Your mom had such beautiful handwriting. Liam's eyes flickered to the book, and for a moment, Emma thought he might retreat back into his shell. But instead, he stepped closer, peering at the open page. "That's her chocolate chip cookie recipe," he said, his voice soft. "She used to make them every Sunday. They were my favorite." Emma smiled. "Would you like to make them with me? I could use some help." Liam hesitated, then shrugged. "Sure, why not?" They worked side by side in the kitchen, measuring flour and cracking eggs. At first, the silence between them was heavy, but as they mixed the dough and shaped the cookies, it began to feel more comfortable. Emma found herself stealing glances at Liam, noticing the way his brow furrowed in concentration as he carefully placed each cookie on the baking sheet. "You're pretty good at this," she said, breaking the silence. Liam smirked. "Yeah, well, I had a good teacher." Emma's heart warmed at the mention of his mother. "She must have been an amazing cook." "She was," Liam said, his voice tinged with nostalgia. "She used to say that cooking was her way of showing love. She'd always make my favorite meals when I was having a bad day." Emma nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat. "That's a beautiful way to think about it. I think I'd like to do that too. Cook for you and your dad, I mean, if that's okay with you." Liam looked at her, his expression softening. "Yeah, that's okay." When the cookies were done, they sat at the kitchen table, each with a glass of milk and a plate of warm cookies. For the first time, Emma felt a sense of connection with Liam, a fragile but hopeful bond that had begun to form. The fragile peace they had built was tested sooner than Emma had expected. One evening, James came home from work looking pale and exhausted. He insisted he was fine, but by the next morning, he was running a high fever and could barely get out of bed. "I think it's just the flu," he said weakly, but Emma wasn't convinced. She insisted on taking him to the doctor, leaving Liam in charge of the house. At the hospital, the diagnosis was worse than they had feared. James had pneumonia, and the doctor recommended he stay overnight for observation and treatment. Emma felt a wave of panic wash over her, but she forced herself to stay calm for James's sake. When she returned home, she found Liam pacing in the living room, his face etched with worry. "How is he?" Liam asked, his voice trembling. Emma took a deep breath. "He's going to be okay, but he needs to stay in the hospital for a little while. The doctors are taking good care of him." Liam nodded, but Emma could see the fear in his eyes. She reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We'll get through this, Liam. Together." For the next few days, Emma and Liam worked as a team to keep the household running. Emma took care of the cooking and cleaning, while Liam helped with the chores and kept up with his schoolwork. They visited James in the hospital every evening, bringing him homemade meals and updates on how things were at home. One night, as they were driving back from the hospital, Liam broke the silence. "Emma, thank you for taking care of him and for being here." Emma glanced at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "Of course, Liam. I love your dad, and I care about you too." Liam looked out the window, his expression thoughtful. "I know I haven't made it easy for you, but I'm glad you're here." Emma felt a surge of emotion, but she kept her eyes on the road. "I'm glad too, Liam, more than you know." As James began to recover, the dynamic between Emma and Liam continued to shift. They had been through something together, and it had brought them closer. Liam started opening up to Emma more, sharing stories about his childhood and his mother. In turn, Emma shared bits of her own past, her struggles and triumphs, and her hopes for the future. One evening, as they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Liam turned to Emma with a serious expression. "Emma, do you think my mom would be okay with this? With you being here, I mean?" Emma took a moment to consider her answer. "I think your mom loved you and your dad very much, and I think she would want you both to be happy. If I can help with that, even just a little, then I think she would be okay with it." Liam nodded, his eyes glistening with tears. "Yeah, I think so too." Emma reached out, placing a hand on his. "She'll always be a part of you, Liam, and she'll always be a part of this family. Nothing can change that. Liam squeezed her hand, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they had formed. For the first time, Emma felt like she was truly part of the family, not as a replacement, but as someone who had earned her place. James returned home from the hospital a week later, his strength slowly returning. The house felt different now, warmer, lighter, as if the storm they had weathered together had cleared the air and left behind a sense of renewal. Emma and Liam had grown closer in his absence, and James noticed the change immediately. "You two seem different," James remarked one evening as they sat together in the living room. "Did something happen while I was gone?" Emma and Liam exchanged a glance, a small smile passing between them. "We just figured some things out," Liam said, his tone casual, but his eyes warm. James raised an eyebrow, looking between them. "Well, whatever it is, I like it. It feels like we're finally a team." Emma reached over and took James's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "We are. And we're not going anywhere." Epilogue. Moving forward. Months passed, and the rhythms of their lives settled into a new normal. Emma continued to cook meals for the family, often using the old recipe book as a guide. Liam would sometimes join her in the kitchen, sharing stories about his mother and adding his own twists to her recipes. The kitchen, once a place of tension, became a space of connection and healing. One Sunday afternoon, as they sat around the table eating a batch of chocolate chip cookies, Liam looked at Emma and said, "You know, these are almost as good as Mom's." Emma laughed, touched by the compliment. "Almost? I'll take that as high praise." James grinned, reaching for another cookie. "I think they're perfect, just like this family." Liam rolled his eyes, but there was no malice in it. "Cheesy, Dad, but yeah, it's pretty good." Emma felt a swell of emotion as she looked at the two of them. James, the man she loved, and Liam, the boy who had become so much more than a stepson to her. They weren't a perfect family, but they were theirs, and that was enough. As the sun set outside, casting a golden glow over the room, Emma realized that this was what she had been searching for all along: a place to belong, a family to love, and a future filled with hope. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Don't forget to click the notification bell icon to stay notified.